And there's a reason why like people make this comment very lightly saying that Indian designers go outside man, get inspired there. It's not just because designers in India are bad.
So how do you ensure as a designer that design meets manufacturing?
And especially in a physical product, you ideally need to have 10, 15 failures of prototypes because you're optimizing a lot of things, right? Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to have you on the podcast. We have a good friend Vyasa here today with us. Vyasa, you've had a very interesting and very varied journey. So it's lovely to have you here. And me and Pushkar would love to hear more from the horse's mouth in terms of what your career has been, what your interests are, and how has that morphed into building businesses. I think it's a very interesting trajectory. It's got a mixture and intersections of a lot of things. But once again, thank you for being with us today.
No, I mean, obviously, every time you call, I have to come, right? So it's not such a big thing at all. I love spending time with you. We spent time before talking about startups, businesses, design, and a variety of topics. And I get to meet Pushkar as well this time. So it was like a opportunity that I couldn't miss. So thank you for having me on the podcast as well. I started very much. It's a very interesting story. So I come from a family of artists, right? Like my grandfather on the paternal side, he does a lot of paintings in the Mysore Palace. My aunt is a national award winner for Ganjifa paintings. Right. And then so similar things. My uncle used to build engines for Java. So
I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, I used to see these massive super bikes being built. I mean, Java built a lot of very interesting bikes at that time for the Czech police department. And so all of that, I guess, in some way became khichdi and turned into design, which is where I ended up. I mean, I had other crazy things also. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Whatever you see me right now, I was like 1/3 of it. Physical, to kya, matlab, forget it. I couldn't even clear any of that. And my dad was like, he didn't even tell me that test results came in. So then I thought I'll do aeronautical engineering, which was also very early in India. I think there were a couple of colleges in the north. But apart from that, mechanical engineering was the closest to what I could be in terms of design at that point of time. So I did that a little bit. And then I started working at GM, on the engineering side of things. And then that's where I met Mr. Satyasilan. He's the assistant general manager at Ashok Leyland right now. Superb, fantastic chap, one of the OG design you could say figureheads of India. Superb work. I'd done a lot of work for Tata. He's done a lot of work for Ashok Leyland now. So he kind of mentored me into saying, you know what, you have the skill. Because I used to sketch a lot. I would put up ideas and things like that. And he was like, yeah, there's this branch called industrial design, and that's when you should do it. I was like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. And then I saw these guys, like, those sketches of cars. It was beautiful. It was evocative. Kind of captured your mind. Like, the first time you look at something where it's getting created from scratch, right? Like you're putting pen to paper and you're kind of imagining how this would be, for who it would be. It was a very interesting journey, and I instantly fell in love. It was just like, this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. So that's when I did my master's at NC State. And then, I worked in a whole bunch of companies, to cut it short, in the US. And 2015, came back and started Analogy here. And so what we do currently is we help businesses kind of realize the value of design, the value of consumer products, and how they can take it to a next level. Because I don't think India is sort of that second destination anymore, or a backward destination anymore for products, right? We have the consumption. We have 1.4 billion people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We've got the per capita income raising rapidly throughout. We started terming our cities as tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. When you start doing that, we've arrived, right?
Exactly.
At that point of time, consumer products are going to be big in India. Obviously, there'll be a lot of competition from white label products from China, traded products from China. It's something that is going to happen, but there is a consolidation also that will happen at a point of time. Right? So we help those kind of businesses kind of get that advantage before these market consolidation happens, get the product differentiated, and even before this mass consolidation gets into place, they can actually be at a very good position to enjoy that consolidation. So yeah, it's a very interesting journey so far.
Was it difficult coming back to India after 10 years? Because I asked a lot of my friends. I've been through that journey myself.
Yeah.
But was it difficult coming back to India, uprooting yourself?
Yeah, 1.5 years we bitched and moaned for like
How long were you in the US?
Around close to 11 years. So yeah, that was a long time. And then initially, you have the usual. You forget that you're actually from here. You were born here, and you end up thinking you've moved back. The term "moved back" sort of means that. But then, took us about a year and a half to kind of just plant our feet, calm down, embrace all the quirks of what India is. Also, the beauty of what India has, right? The friends, family. Like I always felt wherever I was outside of India, I always never had that peace of mind. But once you come home, you have dal chawal, you have the rasam rice, curd rice, obviously because I'm South Indian. You can't sleep without it. It just feels great. Like if you're home. And I thought after a long period of travel and everything, I was like, you know what, this is good. I'm happy with this. I think that was a good move because also 2015 was a time where a lot of things were happening in India, right? Like all of us knew coming back from the US that in the next 3 to 4 years, there's going to be a lot of good inflection points that are going to happen in India. So coincidentally, that was the right move. And it worked out well. Came through a lot of travel, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, all of that. It was an interesting journey, but I don't think when I started, I don't think I realized that I would ever come back. But after I came back, I don't think I'm ever going back ever again. India's got everything we need.
So do you think, like, because you're talking about design and inflection point, do you think we have hit that curve that where, like, did that happen sometime in 2021, 22, where maybe we passed that point and now we are becoming more like a design economy where people are focusing on, or will it come in the future?
No, I definitely think we're there. I'd say that we're in the early stages of that design economy. The comparison I give is basically the same IT economy that kind of started. That's where we're there. In the early days of the Infosys, the Wipros, the TCSs of the world, right?
The late 90s to the mid 2000s.
100%. You've got very interesting individuals, even in design right now in India, who are trying to, do interesting work. Obviously, I mean, there's a struggle around the business side, around establishing value of design, and it's not because the market is so hard, right? Like it's like when people tell you the same thing. They'll say like, if you learn to drive in India, you'll drive anywhere in the world.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's the same thing. If you learn to work with clients in India, you will work with any client in the world. That's as simple as that. Right? Because, I mean, we were having this conversation just 10 minutes before, right? Like every 10 kilometers, India changes and so diverse. It's very tough to kind of plant a very, normalized process of innovation, of value, of design. But I think we do have that inflection point going around, and there are some very interesting companies in India, right? Like who are doing interesting things. Okay, they're not there yet. A lot of stuff still comes from China because we don't have a manufacturing economy yet, which is happening, which is also a good thing. But that's going to be key for us to become design leaders in the world. Because at some point of time, you're not just designing for India, but you're designing
For the world, yeah.
for the world, right?
Yeah.
From India to the world. And that's where I think the design economy is going to get built. I tell every single designer who's going to a master's that if you're doing it, do it in the next year or two. Because the next 5-10 years, the work's here in India. I don't think the work is going to be outside. I mean, obviously there'll be work happening there, but a majority of change, disruption, it's going to be here. Like we're literally standing on top of a gold mine. All you have to do is dig. That's literally it right now. So it's a very interesting time for design in India.
No, absolutely. I think it's kind of an interesting question, a point that you brought up, right? When you're a first-time founder and you're building a company, there's so many balls up in the air. You don't know how to do things. There's the finance part, there's hiring the team, there's finding the money, figuring out which problem you're most passionate about and you feel that you can crack it. Design sometimes becomes a little bit of an afterthought. And you must have seen a lot of founders in the last 10 years building from India. How much of a value do you think they're putting on very simple things like packaging, how you communicate to the customer, how does that flow into a UX UI in their own app, how does the after sales support work, all of that, right? So what percentage of the founders do you meet have sort of a vision to get design as an integral piece of their overall business, and that they feel will become a moat? Like, I mean, I use a Mokobara, we use glasses by Lenskart. Some of these companies have actually thought further than others, and it's because of leadership. Do you agree? And what percentage of the people that you meet are focusing on that right now, and what percentage do you think will start focusing more aggressively in the next couple of years?
I think the percentage is quite small, honestly, right now, because one is, well, there are two things I feel which are arch nemesis of good design. One is the social media exposure of design with all the, the hyper fast time lapse videos of, getting things done in 30 minutes, right? It's never possible, right? Like, so people have this notion that it's quick and it's easy. But the comparison of, let's say, designing a brand or a product, or even like you mentioned, packaging, requires some time to be put in. There's some of these people who have mastered their craft, right? Like you were mentioning, 10 years to take. People have just learned how to make noodles, right? Like you'll never hear that in India.
Yeah.
Because probably that guy would have strung himself up by those noodles by then in India, and it's never going to happen, right? Culturally, we're not built that way.
Right.
So speed obviously is a good thing and a bad thing. But that's the first thing I would say. Social media, in their efforts to democratize design, or basically put the word out that you could design a product like this, they've also made a hash of things, because now most founders think it's very simple. It's very easy. Yeah. While at the same time, I don't want to say it's difficult. It's all about context, right? Where you are in your journey. Because when you start out, you have different problems to solve. Like you mentioned, you have so many things to start for a founder. And probably for him at that time, the easiest solution is, let's go to China. We'll pick up something, modify it quickly, and I'll launch. Right? Which is not a bad thing, which, a lot of designers say that. I was doing a talk at the Mumbai Design Festival, and one of the things I was mentioning there also was that if you're starting out as a first-time founder, trading products are probably the best bet you could put on, because that gives you market validation of whether you are doing something good or not.
Sure.
You spend all this time innovating, and then at the end, you launch, and you don't have that critical mass and that buying power. You've wasted time and money, and your reputation, everything goes for a toss, right? So I think one, there is definitely that fear that people have that, I'll probably end up like that, because in physical product, it's not easy. There's no going back. Once you've made the mold, once you've cut steel, it's done. Marriages at least have divorce.
Yeah, but, exactly.
Once you make a mold,
it's like the error and the defect sort of model.
You can't write a couple of lines of code and just bring it back, or roll a version back. Nothing works, right? So there's a lot of that time that requires. The second thing I feel like also is the nature of us as a culture. People in India are very risk averse, right? So we'll have founders coming and ask. I've had so many founders ask me, tell me what percentage of guarantee you can give me that this design is going to be a hit. I'm like, what is the percent of guarantee you're going to cross the road without getting hit by a bus?
What answer do you give them? Zero.
That's exactly what I tell them. It's the same percentage that you get when you cross the road and you're going to get hit by a bus. That's the same percentage. It's a complete unknown. It depends on so many different things. The way we approach it, the way we've done great projects because we've had great clients, right? There are people who've pushed us also in terms of vision, which you talked about, right? Let's say a Lenskart or maybe a Mokobara, right? Somebody who's gone and challenges the norms of why should it be like this, is basically where they've succeeded as good product founders. Whether it's digital, whether it's physical, doesn't matter. But it's just that status quo that you're challenging and saying, why can't I do it like this? Those people have done well. Smaller percentage, but I think a lot of people are waking up to that. So most of the times we get inquiries from very early stage founders and saying that, hey, I'm planning to start now. I'm going for my first fundraise. Can you help me put together something which I can go show them as a vision of what I'm trying to do, right? Which AI is enabling us very well right now to do. Correct? Like it's a very good tool to do that.
Because it cuts shorts the whole research time, etc., to give something which is functional, feasible.
So the validation part, which used to take like, let's say 3 to 4 months to even validate an idea, can be done in 2 to 3 weeks. So I think a lot of other founders will come up because I think they're seeing the value add of doing these kinds of work as well. So it's an interesting thing that most of these founders also, at least now, are design aware. I don't say they're design educated yet, but they're definitely design aware, which is a good thing for people.
They at least know the importance of design. Good design.
Exactly.
Actually, one of your points brings back to a story from childhood. I think the mid 90s, I think my parents got a slow cooker. And I was like, what is a slow
What's
cooker?
a slow cooker? I don't know.
Yeah, so slow cooker just looks like a normal rice cooker. But the only difference is that you put the meat, you put the vegetables, or you put the rice in, and you set it for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. It uses a different technology, but it slow cooks the food.
Also, you don't lose the nutrition
You
in the
don't
food.
lose the nutrition, right? So, I mean, it was like, what is this? But then it's essentially like this, right? When you talk about design, when you talk about concepts and ideas and opportunities in market, sometimes there is a certain gestation period that you have to go through to get to that. And not everything is going to be ChatGPT. Hey, I saw this on Instagram, I designed something which is going to be better. And that's the herd. But sometimes a lot of slow, there's always this other joke in design that says that, hey, why is this guy $300 an hour for this very simple thing? I can use Canva to create it. But then the designers will have spent 20 years
Getting to
figuring out how to
yeah,
do this, right?
yeah.
People don't underestimate the amount of knowledge that you actually have gathered through.
I always say that, a lot of people say like, hey, show me your portfolio. Or they'll say like, have you done I'm trying to create this. Have you done something similar? Right? Which is the first wrong thing that a founder is looking at, which is again, comes to that point that they're extremely risk averse. And I'm not saying that's wrong because there's a lot of things a founder can mess up on, right? But the simple answer to that is, yeah, if all you've got is a hammer, everything is going to look like a nail, right? So where's the innovation bit? So there's a little bit of a coaching period that, we spend time with telling them about these kinds of things and say, it's totally okay. Because what we do, and for me, I think it's very, very important. It's been very important. We've done more than close to 30, 35 odd different industries that we've worked around.
Wow.
And each of this, the one thing I hate on websites are vanity metrics. Like, so saying like 15,000 post-its, right? 28,000 ideas. It's pointless. It's pointless to go through that. Instead of that, if you look at quality, if you look at, let's say, maybe I create 2 really good concepts which know the user, which have the delight for the user, which could be your unboxing, it could be your packaging, or even the looks. 99% of the time people buy through their eyes. So everybody who comes thinking of aesthetics as an afterthought either are in a very, very safe category, and that's why they don't want that, or they're literally trying to do a small incremental bit of design, right? So there's 2 parts of design. You've got your incremental design, which is like, Apple 15, iPhone 15 to iPhone 16 sort of thing, or you've got entirely fresh, disruptive.
Yeah, completely paradigm shift sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even in design also, founders should know that, okay, they're in this track, which is going to be smaller changes. And it's totally okay to do that because at the end of the day, it's your company. You know what you have to do. But at the same time, if you're doing this, right, there are 2 separate paths. It's like door number 1 and door number 2. So if you take that door, then yeah, you better be ready for the amount of risk that is happening. There's a lot of failures that will come. But the biggest thing, the funniest thing I've experienced so far is the first sign of a prototype that fails, founders lose it.
Yeah. And especially in a physical product, ideally need to have 10, 15 failures of prototypes because you're optimizing a lot of things, right?
Yeah. So what we've learned to do is we've learned to cushion that fall. Before we'd be very optimistic and show them like, hey, we'll take you through the process. But the moment prototype 1 fails, they're like, we've had instances where people just lose it. They're like, oh my God, this is gone. What did you do so far? And then you start analyzing, retrospecting the whole thing, post-morteming the whole process. It doesn't go there. We're like, you're at 1. We still have to go a long way. Now what we do is until we've got till 5 or 8 rounds ourselves, we cushion the fall. We show them prototype 9, maybe prototype 10. At which point it's at a certain safe level, right? And then makes them feel also that, okay, we've gotten somewhere. So it's a journey, but I think second time founders, third time founders, it's a drastic difference from how we work with them because they would have gone through that journey. It's a self-realization process as well, right? So they know all of that. And then like the second time they do it, they'll be like, yeah, let's do this. Okay, you need 3 months to do the prototyping. Yes, let's do it. Whereas let's say probably in the first time, they'll be like, the first 3 months, let's work on the idea. Ideas are like opinions. And the saying about opinions, right? Everybody has one.
Right.
Execution is where it is, right? Like, so it's very important, the prototyping, the constant iteration, building multiple prototypes, testing, talking to users along the way. That's very essential. So in a way, if that is done properly, the innovation index goes up exponentially. It'll just very, very safe. At that point, you could put your hundreds of thousands of dollars, or sometimes a mold is 30, 40 lakhs.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive.
Very, very expensive. So you were not a founder till you came back to India.
No, 100% no.
You used to work for different orgs when you were in the US, and you came to India and you immediately took the plunge because you sort of knew that the ecosystem was kind of lukewarm, and you kind of realized that the skills and crafts that you had gathered in your career is going to be what made you do that, and what are the most challenging things that you encountered to set up a business back in 2005, 2015, 16? I know there's going to be a lot of horror stories, but
Yeah.
that's the proof of the pudding, right?
100%. No. So yeah, I worked at a lot of places. I was usually at most of these companies. At that time, I thought it was actually a very big disadvantage. I kind of, saw that as I couldn't work with other people on the team. And the most important thing about growing as a designer is you have to work in a team. So that's why, like for us, for example, at Analogy, we have no work from home. You want to take a day off, more than happy, go do it. But there's no work from home. It has
Being
to
collaborative
be, because you have to work with people. There's no things you can build at home. But coming back to my point was, initially I was the very first designer with most of these companies that I used to work at, right? Like I was the first industrial designer at Quirky. They were a social product development company started by Ben Kaufman. And I was this very green young grad, just gotten out of school, went there. There's this very experienced mechanical engineer from Oxo who had come in. And I would put 18, 20 hours in coming up with a concept, and he would finish it in 2 hours. I mean, that's the disparity we had, and that was horrible because you went home sleeping, if you were lucky to sleep that day, thinking that, I've done something good today. Every time was catching up to that guy, like, how do I catch up to him? So yeah, it was very interesting times, but the best thing was I got to work in a lot of different companies. So after Quirky, I worked at Casemate, which is an accessories firm. And then at that time, I thought it was a bad decision for me to do it because I thought, mobile accessories are kind of considered cheap for a designer, right? They're not products to be designed. It's a 5-sided box. Usme kya karna hai?
They make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Some of the best businesses are very unsuccessful and they make a lot of money. We talked about it.
500% profit margins per product.
I built a consumer electronic business. I know where the margins in that space
So
are.
massive. And plus for a designer, I realized that I'm launching a product every 2 months.
Yeah.
So it's not like I have
And it's a
things to
mass reach
complain.
product. Huh?
Yeah. So the very first product I designed at Casemate was the credit card case. The very first in the world, we did it at Casemate. So it's this really neon green plastic sort of a thing. And I had to fight with my CEO because he wanted the cards to go on the inside. He had seen a factory product that was there. And I was like, that's horrible user experience. You're doing this, the cards are flying out. We put it on the back. Wow. And then the manufacturer was like, absolutely not. you can't manufacture this. So, and then my CEO was like, okay, get on a plane, go to Korea, figure this out. So I went there, we were building prototypes on the mold floor, and then I'm showing them, there's a translator trying to translate it. It was insane, it was good. And finally we got that out. We also built one of the first wireless chargers to come out. We debuted it at CES. It was a combination of, I think the Chi forum was just starting out at that point.
Got it.
It was just getting made. There were a couple of companies that were coming together and making the consortium. So we had done that. We'd also done the very first, there's a video on YouTube actually. We were debuting it in CES, and there's a thing that we put into the table because we knew that it was going to come into furniture and things. And so one of the things was we would slide a phone across as a demo sort of a thing, and the magnet would catch it.
Oh, magnet would catch it. Okay.
And that was kind of our centerpiece of like how to attract people to the booth.
I met a founder who was 20, who is probably 26 now, and he said that he finished school and he decided he's not going to go to college. And what he did was he actually interned under a lot of European designers for about 3.5 years, and he built his studio. It's based out of Trivandrum, of all places, but really does cutting edge work. And when you look at his designs, you know these are not trying to ape other people, but he has that, like we talked about the slow cooking thing, like you just mentioned, he's slow cooked with people who are experts in that space, and ideally not from India, mostly European and all of that. So that's a different sensibility you get, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's a very good reason for that also, because see, when you go to a different culture, right, everything changes. Like, you know, the way you eat, the way you talk, your body posture, everything changes. So there's this massive shift of energy in your body. And there's a reason why, like, you know, I mean, people make this comment very lightly saying that, Indian designers, go outside, man, get inspired there. It's not just because designers in India are bad. It's just that you're used to that context. You're very comfortable in this environment. A change of environment does wonders for you, right? Like, so when you go to the US, or let's say you'll find somebody, I mean, it happened to me, right? Like, everything somebody said was like, I was like, wow, what an amazing thing he said. People in India would say the same thing. It's a similar thing, not same thing. And then after a while, you kind of realize that.
So it's a context.
It's context.
It's context.
So that's why for designers, travel is important. New places, new experiences, like how we hold a spoon or a fork, right? Like, for example, I don't know if this is 100% right, but I think in Malaysia, they eat cake with a fork, right? Whereas in India, we probably do it with a spoon.
I think a lot of people do that in Southeast Asia. It's a Southeast Asia thing.
Correct.
It's Singapore, Malaysia, a few places, yeah.
So then I think that was because of the British influence and so on and so forth, the colonization bit. So what I'm trying to say is, like, if you're a designer, if you're a creative thinker, right, you need a change of scenery. Change is good. Change is not bad.
I was just wondering, because you talked about you went to Korea to ensure that it happened, the design. So how do you ensure as a designer that design meets manufacturing?
Oh my God, that's a fantastic
That's a
question.
great question.
Honestly, I think that's a question a lot of first-time founders don't even think about, because that is, I'd probably say that's the only reason why you should work with a proper design firm. It looks like, let's say, something else, and when you go to manufacturing, it morphs into a completely different thing. So we call that design integration. It's one of our core services that we do, is exactly that. So for that to happen, you need to know you should have experienced the end product, which is going to be the manufacturing side of things. So you should know what kind of process, what is the material you'll be using, at what temperatures, what are some of the things it will do, how it will perform. It's like getting to know a person altogether, right? Like, so if I'm saying, Sandeep, I know him and he's probably not going to like this, he's probably going to like this. That's sort of things what a material will do once it's getting manufactured. So at that point, most designers will say, like, yeah, you're not thinking outside the box.
Is there a feasibility analysis that happens straight after the design prototypes get done?
100%.
So I remember the stories where Steve Jobs would put all of those ideas and creativity and then call the designers and say, this I think costs $600, we want to make it at $200.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's that method of, funneling down in there. So that's why you start with a really no holds barred idea sort of a thing. But as and when you come down the pyramid, each and every point is what we validate. Is it feasible? Cost here. Next, manufacturability. After that, cost. after that rejection rate, because you could do something where on the manufacturing line there's a whole amount of failures, right? So if you're doing 10 products in one cycle, probably you've got a 50% rejection rate, meaning 5 are bad. So that's because you've not thought about that. So only if you know about all these things ahead of time, you can actually design for it in the initial concept stages. And that is what, to your point of like how important, it's super important. Physical products especially, if not, it'll be extremely costly. You will end up paying more for the mold, you'll end up paying more for assembly, and these will look small. It's like going and shopping at IKEA. Oh, it's just $2. It's only $4. By the end, when you're at the thing, it's like
It just adds up,
$500.
$5.
That's exactly that way.
Vyasa, if you were to recommend 2 books to founders,
Okay.
okay, I think there's a question that I need to come back to, but 2 books to founders who are starting off, or maybe in their journey a couple of years in, to understand more about design thinking, sensibility, which will help them in their journey, which would be the 2 books?
Definitely Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. Hands down the Bible of understanding design. Talks very interestingly about the nuances of what it is. And there's another book that talks about, it's just the 10 principles of Dieter Rams, which is the 10 principles of good design. I think hands down every founder should read, because those will clearly teach you how to really do good design and what are some of the factors that founders should know to qualify what good design is, right? It's not just going to a named designer or another founder or maybe like a very famed studio, but as a founder, they need to know what to qualify as good design for themselves. So yeah, I think those 2 would be great.
Awesome. What advice would you give to students, for instance? I mean, founders are one thing, but I think this is slightly predating that, right? When you are in school or when you're in college, you need to have a different attitude, mindset. I think we talked about creativity. You talked about diversity in the information knowledge that you gather. You talk to a lot of people. I think 3 of us, we all love traveling. So what advice would you give to younger people to kind of learn hack to be more successful when it comes to building products? Or building products is not probably the same as building companies, but I think that's a fundamental core element of it, right?
No, I think number one, honestly, is you have to develop a mindset that you have to, play for long-term. You have to actually win the long-term losses, then do the short-term gains, right? Which is where that's product for you. You can't build something in 6 months or 1 year, or product and brands take time, right? So, and then you just don't get into this whole rat race of I want to be 30 under 30 or 20 under 20 or 25 under 25. It doesn't matter. If you've got a great idea, if you've got a product, nurture it, build it. And and you should take a whole bunch of risks. The first thing a lot of students I've seen do is, the first thing they want to do is go and join a job. And then they get comfortable. They get so comfortable. Sure. It's like you've got your, suddenly there's LinkedIn statuses coming out. Then there's suddenly, they're thanking 20 people for getting featured on a website. I got a lot of shit for that on a LinkedIn post, by the way. Like,
what did you write?
I was talking about, you shouldn't be like celebrating in Lawrence for getting featured on a website, right? There's better things you have to aim for. But I feel like that is a very key component also. And design, creativity, and building is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you got to pace yourself, take your time. I mean, I've actually talked to students who are depressed at 24 for not doing something interesting. I started learning about design at 26. I did my master's by 28. When I got my first job in design, it was like I was 29. I was getting pestered by my father-in-law to get married. Like I was like, holy shit, I got to get married now. I have to find a job. That was the scenario. So take it easy. I mean, and chill out. Like it's not the end of the world that if there's so many things for students nowadays to do. It's not the end of the world, and you'll end up in it. You just have to surround yourself with the right kind of people, with ambition, with passion, people who have a knack for that, right? Like the aesthetics bit of it, the experience bit of it, and the passion to build. If you're around the group, things will happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. So I've got two things that come to mind, and I think both of you guys might agree. First is I remember as an engineer, you go work for a few years, etc. You got a lot of your peers who go to the US very early. I mean, especially proper South Indian kids, they go to the US, MS or without MS, they go work there. What is very interesting is a lot of them told me 5 years later, 10 years later, that they had peers in the US who were 25 years older, still being an engineer, still coding, still very actively coding. Whereas majority of our public here wants to move up and have that gratification of having titles and people working under them in corporate. So that was one thing which is very startling, because I would also thought at that time, I was like, hey, listen, if I go to the US, 5 साल काम कर लिया, manager बनने का है.
Right.
So that is one thing. So you can do one thing for a long period of time and get really, really good at it. Like you said, you talked about your boss or your peer who could do stuff in 2 hours, which took you like 60 hours to do, right? So that's one. I think it's a mindset as well. So the second is we consciously are very comfortable where we are.
Yeah.
And I think added to that, if you have a little bit of money, you have job satisfaction or some title, we get a little bit ahead of ourselves. We go a little bit egoistic, a little bit narcissistic. But so we tend to overinflate our own sense of worth. And entrepreneurship there is very humbling.
Very well said. It's very humbling.
It's the truth. So sometimes you need to strip ourselves for who we are and how we present ourselves, and then focus on building. Right? I mean, I have had great experiences in airport lounges, sitting and talking to people, and there are completely different experiences in life. But a lot of people are like, no, I will go only to this lounge, I will speak to only these people, whatever. So I openly have conversations with a lot of my friends who say that, hey, we did fly to Bali or we fly to Tokyo, we stayed for 3 days at the Sheraton. And I'm like, you should have stayed at home, right? You didn't add any value to your experience, etc. Interestingly, I think we have the ingredients to have a great design culture in India, because you look at the architecture, you look at food, you look at textiles, you look at all of these things in India. It's a jugalbandi, and that's what you need in design, right? I mean, you have all of these things, but I think the problem here is we tend to ape a Scandinavia.
That's very true.
Ape a
That's
US.
very true. No, there is. I'll tell you why, right? Like, because every culture has a design language. So we talked about the Scandinavians. They use what is available to them, which is the white. Like, I'm not sure what is the white wood, and then you've got like a very blue or a accent color or a white. And there's a reason for it, because there's very little sunlight over there. So white reflects a whole bunch of light, and so that's why every furniture in there is light, because they're trying to capture most of that light and make the most of it, because they've got 2-3 months of sunlight. But in that contrast, we should make everything black in because we have so much sunlight. But that's not the case. Like, what we really need to do is there's a journey of discovery and design to find out who we are as Indian, and what is that image that we put out to the world as to what is Indian by design.
Sure.
So that has to be done. It's not. I've seen so many people do this, and it's very frustrating, because they'll just take a watch, a really nice watch, and make it traditional with those, mandalas and all of that, and then call it Indian. That's not Indian.
They Indianize it.
That's just a motif.
Yeah,
It's not Indian.
and even the other day, I was very disappointed when I heard about Rohit Bal's passing away, and he's been an icon for so long. And when you think about it from a business standpoint, Rohit Bal and there's Sabashish Chatterjee, a lot of these people have built cult brands, but they've not been internationally really big brands like Ralph Lauren. But I think we have the masala. We have not been able to market the masala and adjust to the sensibility of other people across the world. And I keep talking to Arjun all the time, and I'm like, Arjun, I think we are going to become a big D2C if we can crack D2C products cross-border. So you adapt something which has got an Indian heritage, but you can sell in Scandinavia. You can sell in the US. You can sell in Italy, but we still preserve. Okay, we've probably done that in yoga and Ayurveda, but those guys have marketed it better than we have.
Yeah, seriously better.
And I mean, whatever we say, we keep saying that hey, we come with heritage, 2,000 years, 3,000 years. Those guys have done a fantastic job at branding and marketing. But we have those things, and it's up to the founders to pick it up and say, hey, listen, we have this. Now, how do we get it to the next level?
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities in the health side, right? Like there's so many different Ayurvedic herbs. It's being sold in the US. I mean, there are certain ingredients. Oh my God, it's sold at massive amounts in there. But at the same time, we've also got great products, right? Like, so if you look at the concept of, let's say we are lighting diyas during Diwali, right? Like that itself, there's so much of energy that comes in. Everybody in India lights a diya once in a while in a day, right? Like, so whether it's for tradition, whether it's for light or something. If you remember in the 80s or the 90s, like power cuts was so freaking amazing, right? You light a candle, you light a diya, you've got stories, you've got that sense of spending time with your family, right? There are those, things, the shadows you made on the wall. I mean, these are experiences that should be productized, right? Like, it should be brought back because people have a nostalgia, they have a certain memory of these things. And that's the value of physical products. So people always tell me like, oh, the world's going digital. No, you're sitting on a chair and telling me the world's going digital.
Yeah, exactly.
How the hell is that going to happen? That's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? How did you fly here? You flew in a plane. And
Yeah, you didn't get on an app and come here, right? So
Day you teleport, tell me the world's going digital. So until then, physical objects are here to stay. And they remind you of amazing experiences. Like I still remember the watch my dad gave to me as a graduation gift, right? That gift that my grandfather gave my wife, before he passed. These are things that will stay forever in memory. And that's the value of physical projects. I mean, but I do agree, like physical products should not crowd the world. It should not be so many that we don't need, another comfortable chaise lounge. We have enough, right? Like so, but there are so many problems in the world that are not solved, which a lot of physical objects can solve. Water, air. I mean, there's so many of these things that there are fire incidents that keep happening. That's where we should do so many interesting things. I mean, like even in terms of medicine, I think India has so much to offer to the world. There's all of these things, but yeah, I think instead of finding a shortcut, if somebody sits there, develops it out for a couple of years, it'll work. 100% it'll work.
I'm also a staunch believer that India is probably in the next 10 years is going to build some amazingly cool medtech, health tech products, which are going to be used in a lot of emerging markets, right? And I don't think the large guys can innovate and have the level of knowledge at a local level and their cost structure to even compete with the guys that are going to come out of India. That's going to be a very, very massive wave. Huh? And it's not like going to be like a B2B SaaS wave. It's a multi-trillion-dollar market that you're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the roti maker, right, which they made.
Roti Magic.
Yeah. That's amazing. That I feel is truly innovative.
Yeah.
Like you could extend it to a whole bunch of breads, like tortillas, you could do all of that. There's so many of those things.
She did a lot of prototyping, Rasa, because I remember seeing, I think Prantik, you and me discussed about it, but I remember seeing 2013-14 when she started like third or fourth prototype. She made I think she spent a lot of years.
It was.
To perfect it.
We actually had a lot of calls with them initially. I think we were planning to do some work together at that time.
Pranoti.
I think so. I don't remember the name. But yeah, we did have a call and they showed us there's so much of iteration, so much of work to refine that. It was a lot of work. So that bit, I think I'm honestly telling you, in the next 5 years or 10 years, I mean, you can see the cars that are coming out, right? Like Mahindra, Tata, the level of design, it's going to happen. It's 100% guaranteed it's going to happen.
So what stage of founders should reach out to you and your studio, and how do they reach out to you?
So I would say anybody who's probably at a, at the cusp of closing an angel round or maybe a seed round, because again, physical products are expensive. It's not that we don't like early stage founders. I'm always available to chat with them. No obligation, nothing. They're the most welcome to come and do that. But if we're going to start,
that's why you're part of the tribe.
100%.
We believe in the same
100%.
philosophy, yeah.
But yeah, if we're going to do something, at least an early seed round or an angel round is important because we have to build prototypes and things like that. The best way to reach out to me is either on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, or our website has a contact form where they can just fill it and somebody will get in touch immediately. We have a great team of people. It took a long time to kind of assemble it. We lost it in the middle, 2-3 years of really bad hiring, and I mean it was a bad time for me personally. Also, I was going through a lot, so that kind of affected it. But I think now we have a seriously good team which does a great work. So yeah, superb. And by the way, you guys should come to the new studio. It's awesome.
I just had one question I couldn't ask you. So, in your opinion, what's the biggest enemy of good design? Is good design always simple, or it can be complicated?
I think you've nailed the question and the answer as well. Um, I think the best design that's happened in the world, everything is extremely simple, right? There's no added value. There's no. I think in one word, if you have to sum up the biggest enemy of good design is novelty.
Novelty.
So you're trying to add on purple lights to a product, or making it in our words like jing jang, that doesn't really work, because see, at some point it started with form follows function, but now form follows emotion, form follows experience, right? So we've transitioned through these many layers to come to good design, which is what the right context is at this point of time. So whether it's a watch, it's a glass, any daily object, or the glasses that we drink of, or the eyewear that we're wearing, the simplest ones always work, because at some point of time, novelty products, you'll buy it, but you'll never use it, right? There's something that will prevent you from using it. But the most simplest ones are the ones that you always reach out to. You'll wear the same easier because it's lightweight, it's thin, it sits well on my face. Those are the key things. There's a part of our process that we talk about where we literally peel down the features into these three things: primary functions, secondary functions, and tertiary functions. Every single novelty requirement that a client has goes into the tertiary one. Because let's say if you're making a chai maker, the first thing it has to make is goddamn good cup of chai. Everything else is secondary, right? And then the final paint, color, texture. So I think, keeping it simple, keeping it very focused, and also I think at some point of time, it's a very good point you made, is not to overcomplicate it. Not having 10 features. 2 really good features in physical products is very important. 2 really good working features.
Even in software, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Everywhere.
Yeah.
If you've got a very focused niche solution that works really well for a large TAM, that's what you need. That's a no-brainer winner in my opinion.
It's a great nugget of wisdom, actually. Yeah. Keep it simple. Strip it down. Keep it simple. Strip it down, and then Great. Thank you so much, Vyasa. This was a very, very insightful session. Thank you for taking the time out. Everybody, please like, share, or comment. Once again, I'd like to thank Beehive for providing this wonderful place for shooting our podcast. See you on the next one.